Hello, in this video I'll talk about custom CLI commands in SR Linux, and as always I'll follow my blog post in networkcloudandeverything.com. In the earlier posts, we've covered how to build and configure a data center network in a virtual environment. And in this one, we will discover the programming capabilities of SR Linux, particularly the command line programming with CLI plugins of SR Linux. So I'll talk about CLI plugins and then show you an example that I've written in Python. And if you already have your data center fabric, you'll see how to deploy this show command in your SR Linux leaf. First of all, what is a CLI plugin? So as you may know, this SR Linux is Python-based and open, so you can see source code of the CLI commands that you use. We'll get to that. But that structure gives you the possibility of uploading your own CLI command. So with the CLI plugins, you can just use it like any other native command. So how do we create this? There is a Python framework by SR Linux. So first thing, you need to get familiar with that. But it's also really useful, I think, to take a look at the example codes like show version or date command in a global level. So those things will give you a bit of an idea of how things are working in the back. So you have documentation, the framework, and some examples. Those two were the sources that I used to build my own show command. Now I'm connected to my leaf one that I created in the earlier posts. I'll first go to bash and go to this path, management CLI and plugins. There we see some Python files already that are defining some part of the CLI. And if you want to take a look at the show commands particularly, you also need to go to the reports. If I look at this one, I see some show commands like show version, show system, and so forth. So they are open here to consume by the programmers. So let's move on to the show fabric that I created. So this show command gives you the most common things you usually check on your leaf router, like uplink statistics, EBGP and IBGP status, learned routes, and so forth. So it makes sense to have this show command on your leaf router. And this command, when you run it, gives you a report of your leaf status in the fabric topology. So it tries to discover the uplinks, the EBGP peerings, IBGP, etc. So it actually assumes that you have something like this. Now let's see how you can get this show fabric in your SR Linux. It's actually just running one command to get, but it can be complicated depending on the networking in your host. So I put some points here to take into consideration. And if you get your internet access to your containers, then you can just run this command to get the show Fabric CLI plugin, as well as some scripts to manage it. So this command simply downloads the fabric.py file under this directory, where SR Linux looks at for the CLI plugins. Then it creates a show fabric folder under the current path and downloads get, set, and delete scripts under that. So get and delete simply gets and deletes, but I need to talk about set scripts a bit. So as I mentioned, this show command looks for the uplinks and EBGP and IBGP peerings. So how does it do that? It simply gets all the interface descriptions and see the ones that have the keyword you specified with the set script. So you may have two uplinks and their description could be like uplink 1 and uplink 2. In that case, uplink is your keyword to discover your uplink interfaces. Or in my case, it was 2spine1 and 2spine2. So spine is my keyword to detect the uplinks. And then I also need to give the EBGP and IBGP group names, as well as the network instance. It's usually default unless you have a reason to change that to something else. Once you give all these inputs, set script will bring you to the SR Linux CLI, then you can just try it out. So let's do it in the lab together. Again, I'm in the leaf one. So if I look at the show commands, I see that I only have the native show commands. And once I get the show fabric, I expect to see it in here. So I go to the bash and I paste this command. I copy it from the blog post. and it simply downloads Fabric CLI under this path, and then it downloads get, set, and delete scripts. Then right after that, it actually executes the set script, and it asks me to give my uplink subinterfaces description keyword. So I will keep it as spine, and my eBGP group name is also spine. IBGP EVPN group name is EVPN. So I'm not changing anything in my case. So now again, I'm back to the Linux CLI, and this time if I check the show command with tab, now I see my Fabric command here. So Fabric command has some options like help, platform, statistics, etc. Show platform gives you the chassis type, serial number, uptime, and the resource utilization. Then you got show uplink, which detects the uplink interfaces based on the description I gave. Then we got show Fabric route reflector, gives you the route reflector information. But you have one command that gives everything in one go, which is show Fabric summary. And when you run that, you will see a report of your leaf status in your Fabric topology. So that was the end of this part. In the next video, we will see details of how to code it in Python. If you are interested, hope to see you there. Thanks for watching.